Welcome back, my friends. Another episode of the Suited Kings podcast and episode 2 of the WSOP Prep 2026 series. I'm already stumbling my words, Wes, but the good news is we have another very special guest joining us today, a three-timer on the podcast, Mr. Ryan Laplante. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, doing all right. Thanks for having me on. Really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing this with y'all.
Yeah, dude. Happy to have you back on. And today we're going to be discussing early stage deep stack play. If you
Yeah,
guys haven't yet, I do want to mention go listen to our first episode with Lucky Chewy last week where we discussed getting your mind right. So last week we
it's
discussed
really
getting your
good.
mind right. Yeah. And in this week we discuss, actually in the tournament, super deep stack play with one of the best to do it. So let's go ahead and get into it. You guys down?
Yeah,
Sure.
let's do it. Thanks for being here, Ryan. So yeah, our most of you guys listening are probably going to be playing buy-ins between or up to maybe 1,500 this summer. And so one thing about these tournaments is, especially early on, there are tons of recreational level players. And so we're going to be kind of talking about, on one hand, what are some of the biggest mistakes people make early in these tournaments. And so we can look at it from the standpoint of let's make sure we're avoiding these mistakes ourselves, but also how do we take advantage of a lot of other players, even some decent players making these types of mistakes, and how do we build big stacks from that and really take advantage of those times we want to register level one of a tournament. So
Yeah. And we have Ryan here who has been playing WSOP. How many years has it been, Ryan?
So, my first WSOP event was when I was 21 years old, and my first World Series, I got off to a bit of a rough start. I think I'm gonna say I went like 0 for 15 or 16 or something like that
Okay.
entries, and then I finally got on the board with the min cash, and then final table, and then for my first final table. I think going into the unofficial final table of 10, I was either 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. When we made the official final table of 9, I was chip leader,
Okay.
and then I took 8th. And
Oh,
first place was like 600K.
that's a roller coaster back and
Yeah,
forth.
at 21 years old. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
that's
it's still a big score.
yeah,
how many final tables
yeah.
do you have now?
15.
That's insane. That's insane. And you have
Yeah,
you have
and I would say
you have
it's
one
like,
bracelet?
yeah, I have one bracelet with like 2 or 3 second places, a couple thirds, couple fourths, and then pretty much one of each of every other position.
Oh man,
Maybe
what a
Yeah.
dream to be in that
two eight.
spot 15 times, the final table of a
Yeah.
WSOP event. That's pretty sick.
And it's a pretty good mix between online and live. I'm gonna say it's probably like 8 or 9 live, and then
Okay.
maybe 5 or 6 online. So
Yeah. I mean, it's clear
pretty
you have
good.
a ton of experience in these fields, and that's exactly why we want to have you on today. And Wes, I love how you explained kind of what we wanted to dissect today as well. I'm going to let you take it away, Wes, to start it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a list of some leaks here, and we can kind of take these in whatever direction we want. But actually, and this might not be the biggest one, but one thing I've started noticing recently in live poker is people have gotten so used to down betting that I think people bet small too frequently on flops. And I don't think people I don't think people recognize the boards they're supposed to like bet three quarters or even bet 100 over bet, And so let's talk about that. First
Ooh.
off, when we recognize an opponent bets like 30% on a big bet board, how do we take advantage of that? And then vice versa, what are these boards we should be doing that on?
So that's a pretty good starting point. I feel as though we should probably start with pre-flop, because most people like really screw up pre-flop.
Okay.
Sure.
Flop decision making is really, really, really complex. To start with pre-flop, most people really confuse deep stack pre-flop and mid-stack pre-flop. They get it backwards. Most people think, oh, hey, I'm really deep, so I get to play a lot of like speculative hands in theory. When really in theory, deep stack, you actually have to play a lot tighter. A lot of times I'll start like a coaching session with someone who hasn't done a lot of theory studying. I'll start with the question of, okay, so you're in early position, and at 100 bigs, 60 bigs, or 40 bigs, which stack depth has the loosest opening range? And most people will answer either 100 bigs or 60 bigs. And the answer is 40 bigs. And the answer is definitely 40 bigs. Like any other answer is definitely wrong. And a person who understands tournaments or understands poker should immediately answer 40 and know why it's that. And the reason why it's that is because the deeper effective you are, the more important it is to be able to make the nuts. And when you're shallow or effective, you get to open hands like king, queen off under the gun, 8-handed, and that's just a wonderful hand. And king, jack off becomes an okay hand, and ace 10 off becomes a pretty good hand. And when you're deeper effective, hands like 6-7 suited are pretty good, while at 30 bigs, 6-7 suited is a pretty terrible open at early position. So first of all, understanding what hands have utility pre-flop in terms of your opening range. But the other things that people really mess up too are what hands are worth calling and 3-betting versus an open 2. So that's another thing that people really, really, really mess up. Like, here's a really good example. So let's say early position opens and you're also in early position and you're really deep effective. You don't have a calling range in theory. You just 3-bet. But almost everyone screws that up. Like you're literally just supposed to 3-bet in theory.
Are we talking at 100 bigs deep?
Yeah, at 100 big blinds deep.
Yep. Okay.
And even at 60 big blinds deep, you're supposed to be 3-betting 75% of your range, early position versus early position. And as you're closer to your opponent, you 3-bet more and more of your continuing range. You just get more and more calls as you get closer to the button. And the reason why this happens is because as you're closer to the button versus an open, your EQR goes up, your equity realization goes up. And as your equity realization goes up, more and more of your hands want to be able to see the flop. So more and more hands want to call. So your 3-bet range becomes more polar. So you're adding in more bluffs, you're calling more frequently. So your value threshold pretty much stays the same based off where your opponent's opening from. But your 3-bet range starts to shift a lot. Most people just think about pre-flop kind of like very backwards. They're thinking, oh, hey, I'm really deep, so I want to call a lot and want to call a lot of hands and play a lot of hands, when really it's backwards. When you're really deep, you want to, as the opener, you want to play hands that play towards the nuts. And then when you're playing versus the opener, unless you're the big blind, you're mostly playing 3-bet or fold.
Okay.
And the only real exception is the button and the big blind. Every other position mostly plays 3-bet or fold, unless you're playing specifically verse, like a cutoff or hijack open, or maybe a button open. Then you get to play a lot more calls as a late position player. And if you're having difficulty really being able to visualize this, in a podcast call or in this podcast discussion, what I would strongly recommend, you can find these charts on my own site on Learn Pro Poker. If you want to have a much more in-depth way to learn, I would very highly recommend getting either Octopi. It's very cheap and affordable GTO study tool. They have their own WSOP Prep stuff going on. I think they're one of the best tools on the market. They're also the most affordable tool on the market. And then if you want a much more robust pre-flop tool, but they're much more expensive, GTO Lab.
Okay.
The main tools that I study for pre-flop and post-flop, GTO Lab, Octopi. I think they're both incredibly powerful tools. They're really, really, really must have if you want to become a really good tournament player.
I'm going to, I'll put your website in the show notes as well as those links. I want to ask you for clarification. So you were saying that, and as we're deeper, we essentially want to be tighter and try and make more nutted type hands. That makes complete sense. And I agree with you intuitively. Players are getting it wrong where it seems like because I'm deeper, I should be playing more hands or I can call more. When we bouncing back to your 3-bet, where we're strictly 3-betting this deep instead of flatting, are we also only going to be 3-betting with those nutted type hands then? And is it the same case? Or are we having those bluffs in there?
So we're not really 3-betting nutted range. We're 3-betting a loose, some relatively loose linear range. So here, let me give a very precise example. Okay. So let's say you open 100 big blinds deep under the gun, 8-handed. That opening range is 16% of hands. It's as loose as ace-3 suited, king-9 suited, queen-10 suited, jack-9 suited, 10-9 suited. Pocket pairs down to pocket 5s in full, and ace-jack off in full. So 16% of hands. And let's say you're in the hijack, low jack. So with the full big blind ante, so in cash you're pure three betting, but in tournaments you're essentially splitting calling half the time and three betting half the time. If you want to simplify it, you can pure three bet. I tend to lean towards mostly three betting, but your entire playing range here, you can three bet every single hand in your range. Literally, your three bet range is completely and totally linear. So you can three bet pocket sixes, sevens, eights, nines, tens, jack 10 suited, 10-9 suited, ace 3 suited, ace queen suited, ace queen off. Your entire playing range can three bet.
Okay.
You don't need to three bet every single hand, but you should be able to three bet every single hand. There's no hand in your entire playing range, and this entire range is 13% of hands.
Okay.
It's in cash without an ante. Everything's a three bet. Just with the big blind ante, you get to three bet.
Can you give a quick definition of linear?
Linear means that there isn't a gap between your value and your quote unquote bluffs. There is no gap.
Okay.
A polar means between your value and your bluffs, there is a large gap.
Okay.
So there's
It's
air
polar.
in between.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Polar in between.
Got it.
Okay.
At like 60 bigs, that's where you're three betting everything. But at 100 bigs, you do get some flats.
Okay, so at 100,
U7, U6, there's a little bit less. But yeah.
so at 100 bigs here, I'm looking at the GTO Wizard pre-flop ranges, and it looks. So you said under the gun 8-handed, and then we're looking at the hijack.
Yeah.
So from here, it's saying we 5.4% of the range we three bet, and then 11% we call. What would you chalk that like discrepancy up to?
I was talking about low jack, but hijack on lab is 8.9 and 5.5. So they're pretty similar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Low jack
that's pretty similar.
Like 5 and 9. But yeah, it's
so for here again. It's the closer you get to the button, you're going to have more and more calls, and that's just how it's always going to play. It's just the closer you are EP, you're just going to be three betting a much higher function of your continuing range. And this is where just a lot of people screw up. Instead of like, they'll play this spot like U8, U7, they'll play where they're calling 80% of their continuing range. So they're calling a hand like ace 10 suited and peer instead of three betting it half the time. Or they'll call a hand like ace 9 suited instead of only three betting it. Or they'll call a hand like ace queen off half the time, or so on and so forth. Instead, you could just play the spot purely as a three bet, and it would be much better as a way to play.
Okay.
It'd be a much more simplified and much easier way to play. Like, for instance, if let's say I'm playing one of my tougher events of the series, like I'll play the 10K win. That like I've had table draws in that where it's literally all high roller regs, especially on day 2. U7 versus U8, I'm only three betting in this spot.
Yep.
I just don't have calls. It'd be very silly deep stack to have calls here. And especially at like 60 bigs, this spot is purely a three bet spot. And like the EV difference between having calls and not having calls is essentially zero.
And how do we balance this versus a separate field like a 1500 on a weekend? So
this is where things get very different. So, earlier when I'm saying, you kind of want to play really tight, kind of want to play nutted hands, now that this is where my advice is going to be wildly different.
Yep.
And this is also where having a lot of understanding of post flop starts to matter a lot. So there are 7 different main factors that dictate c-bet size and frequency. And it really matters a lot to have a pretty good feel as to what those factors are and how they really dictate things. But the main couple of things that matter the most are stack depth and board texture, and then range advantage, and nut advantage. And I would say those are like kind of the main things. And then also how like range interacts on board textures.
Get your notebooks out, peoples.
But board texture is really the main thing. Once you're really deep effective, that dictates bet size. So what Wes was saying earlier about people messing up bet sizes on flop, this is where where things really start to matter a lot. So here's a board texture that people really mess up in these deep stack spots. Jack 10 X two-tone.
Yeah.
So let's say U8 open, so under gun 8-handed. That's what U8 means for
Perfect.
Those
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So U8 opens, U7. Let's say I'm in U7 with, I don't know, ace queen offsuit. Maybe I have the ace of diamonds. And the flop is jack of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 4 of diamonds. And they check to me. So maybe it goes open to 2.5 big blinds. I 3-bet to 8.5 big blinds, going 3.5x because we're 100 big blinds deep. They call. So the pot size is, call it 20 bigs. They check. Most people, when they c-bet here into this 20 big blind pot, would c-bet like either 5 bigs, or maybe they go, oh, this is like a really dynamic board texture, so I'm going to upsize in this 3-bet pot. Maybe they'll pick a big size, quote unquote. They'll go like 10 big blinds. Theory, you should be like potting this. You should be going 20 bigs. You could even overpot this. You could go 30 big blinds here. 30 big blinds would essentially set up pretty close to 2E, I think. Maybe like 28 bigs or whatever would set up 2E. 2E being the size, geometric size to set up same size bet for flop and turn. So whatever size that would probably be a size that theory would pick. I think it would probably be around 140 to 160% pot, somewhere in that range. So that's probably a size that theory would pick.
So the geometric size is essentially when we're this deep, so we can figure out a way to get it all in.
Yeah, get it all in easily. And the reason why theory is going to pick that type of size is because on these really dynamic board textures, theory always tries to find ways to get all in. And it's going to find ways to get all in 2 streets or 3 street scenarios.
I like this theory guy.
Yeah. So when you're finding all-ins for 2 streets, these 2 street all-in spots exist very often on these Jack 10X boards. Or even Jack 10X will exist in 1 street. For instance, I've seen sims where it'll go like open and 3-bet, and then you'll be like, it'll just like rip 200% pot. Yeah, it'll just rip 250% pot on Jack 10X 2 times.
I think, when you're out of position, like I've seen that in cash where it's like I 3-bet from the blinds they call, and it's Jack 10 low card, and we're just supposed to rip it for 80 big or for 90 bigs or whatever.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Now, whether this is practical, I mean, those sizes aren't that practical, but is pot practical here? Yeah, pot's very practical here. And if you're wondering why pot's really practical here, okay, so let's say you're the out of position player and you call with a hand like 9-10 suited or ace-10 suited or pocket 8s or pocket 7s. Now, let's say I pick a c-bet size that's 75% pot or pot. How do you feel?
Yeah.
You feel disgusting.
It's like, 100%.
You're miserable. And that's the point of those bets, is those bets are supposed to make the weaker part of your range indifferent.
Just applies a maximum pressure to them.
Yeah. And if I can make the weaker part of your range indifferent, then I've done what I'm supposed to do with my bluffs.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
So if this stuff seems complex, you can find ways to simplify it and make it easy.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, I think the helpful thing to think about is it can sound so complicated, like you said, but just thinking like, what am I trying to do here? And then so it's like, okay, here we have ace queen. So we're trying to, make the 10X indifferent, maybe the under pair is full, like, but we still have plenty of equity. And then when we have pocket queens, kings, aces, when we have ace jack, it's like, we're trying to get the maximum value, but we recognize that like there are enough cards that change this board where we'd rather go for it on 2 streets rather than waiting to see a river too.
Yep, exactly.
It's funny how, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like it's the jargon that makes things feel more complicated than they actually are as well. I mean, a lot of people, especially pros who don't know. I mean, there's pros out there who aren't familiar with the jargon, but they do these things intuitively. They just don't know how to articulate them, such as someone like Ryan.
Yeah. I think the other thing too that makes it hard is like if you look at these sims, there's a lot of like these partial decisions and a lot of this like this huge complexity. So it seems more complex than what it actually is. But if you just bucket decisions into, okay, these types of draws generally do this, these types of hand strengths generally do this. Okay, why is this type of hand strength betting this size mostly? Why is this type of hand strength betting this size mostly? You can usually logic it out.
Okay.
I
We could talk about, it's funny because I was just thinking about trying to simplify a situation, but then we could go into about a million different things about like different positions and how, like in terms of bet sizing, like if RC bet sizing, like that changes, position. So it would take us, we could literally talk about this for a week straight. It'd be the longest episode ever.
If you guys want to discuss some exploitative stuff and how we actually use this stuff to make a lot of money deep stack, especially these top live birds, I think that's probably like what a lot of people are looking.
You got it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so backing up to pre-flop, here, let's pull up so one of the other reasons why I really enjoy GTO Lab is they have some really good video courses on there. There's one by Nick Petrangelo. It's called the 26-day training plan. You have to get their pro plan, which is $150 a month, and then you have to ask them for access to it, or you have to pay for it. I don't know how much you have to pay for it, but it's very, very good. Anyways, it does a mixture of theory and exploit stuff. So in some of his videos, he talks about like how out of line he gets and some of the tougher stuff he plays, and he gets a little out of line. I get ridiculous, like insane out of line. So to start with that, so GTO opening range, under the gun, 8-handed, that 16% range going back to. But let's say I'm playing first level of WSOP, I don't know, 800 deep stack. Mm-hmm. So sit down, I look around, I've never seen anyone before. And I know, most pros and most of the people I see, they're all 30 plus. None of them seem like they're European regs. So just see a recreational players, right? Pretty typical table draw for this type of field. So I know that pretty much know what I'm playing versus going to be a recreational player. So, deuces in theory, normally it's a fold. I am definitely opening this. Ace deuce suited in theory, normally it's a fold. I am definitely opening that. What about, king six suited? Also definitely a fold in theory. I'm opening that. If I'm opening king six suited, is there really a difference between king six and king five? Or king five and king four? Or king four and king three? Or king three and king deuce? So I'm opening king deuce suited too.
Yeah.
What about like queen seven or queen six, queen five,
suited.
Queen four?
Suited.
Suited. Obviously all suited hands. I want to make flushes. I want to make good flushes that unblock middling and weak flushes. I also want to make like straight flushes or straight down flushes or pair and flush draws. So jack 7 suited, 10-7 suited, 9-7 suited, 8-6 suited. So my opening range would probably be here. Let me pull up Poker Stove.
While you pull it up, what positions are we discussing from?
Under the gun,
under the gun,
big blinds deep on a table of all recreational players and the reason why, there's a very specific reason why we get to do this. And actually, if I pull up GTO Wiz, one of the features they have that they added recently, I haven't gotten it yet, but pretty sure if I use their pre-flop node locking tool, I could probably confirm that this range is profitable, which I would bet it is.
I want to give a quick caveat as well. While we do, obviously I recommend everyone opening that under the gun because the action's amazing. But someone like, and this is something we discuss on the podcast a lot, but someone like you or Wes or myself, like we have a lot more experience post flop, so we know how to not make those mistakes later in the streets where these amateurs, and a lot of other players will make mini mistakes later on in the hand, which wouldn't make this opening profitable for them.
Theory opens about 16%. I'm going to be opening closer to about 30 to 35%. Mostly focusing on suited hands, going a tiny bit looser and offsuit, but not too crazy. And the reason why is because, so when you open an early position in theory, the response to for a 3-bet is supposed to be about 5-ish%. And it's supposed to be about 5-ish% from each position. But in actuality, you're going to be 3-bet about 2.5 to 3%. So I'm 3-bet about half the time I'm supposed to. And then on top of that, when I take it post flop, most of the time what's going to happen post is I'm probably going to go 2, 3, or 4-handed. And when I'm in those 2, 3, and 4-handed spots, if I'm heads up or 3-ways, a lot of my C-bets are going to get through like an insane amount, and I'm going to get significantly under check raise. On top of that, when I have value, I'm going to way overperform with my value hands because these recreational players are going to significantly overpay me off. And then when they have value, they're going to essentially tell me when they're really strong, and I'm going to be able to make very easy folds.
That's why we love these 1500s on the weekend, right?
yeah, exactly. So for me, it's going to be super easy for me to navigate post flop. So then that's the caveat, is it's super easy for me to play heads up 3 ways, 4 ways, and 5 ways, 6 ways versus these recreational players, because I'm used to seeing a player just tell me they have the nuts, and I'll fold the second or third nuts without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like literally like folding queen and king high flushes on a non-paired 3 flush board.
Like
and
a robo?
doing it quickly without, like his fold is super easy.
Yeah, that's what
like
I thought.
Saying, oh my God, this fold is so sick. No, it was a super easy fold.
I felt the same way. I felt the same way.
This is not a sick fold.
That was a guy telling him he had the nuts.
Yeah, he folded, like he overpotted so he could fold these. Like the only argument you can make is his overpot the best decision he can make there? I love his overpot. I think his overpot is a sick decision. To me, that's the good decision that he made.
I think that's a good idea.
That's the sick decision that he made.
That's a good idea, though, for us to explain to the audience as well, is that if you are to overpot a river bet, or if you're betting the river, and you overpot and an amateur jams over that, it's almost always nutted versus someone who's a professional. But if it's an amateur doing that, it's always the nuts. It just is.
Yeah. Like his fold is super easy.
Yeah.
Did he play that hand amazing? Yes. But was it because of his fold? No.
Right.
It's because of this decision he made before that, which is knowing that the overpot was the best decision he could make, which it was.
Yeah. Imagine that hand was
a ton of money.
Imagine that hand was against a different player that was a top-notch pro who just had the ace of hearts blocker, then could exploit that and jam it as a bluff.
Yeah. In which case, then he should overpot and call.
Yeah.
And then his overpot would still be a really good decision. And then he still would have made a lot of money. When
you sit down at a WSOP table on a weekend event on these lower buy-ins, what are you looking for immediately? You sit down, you're assessing the table. Are you tagging opponents? What does that look like?
So one of the nice things about the WSOP app is you can tag people, and it'll actually save it from previous things. So I actually use the same color coding and note-taking system that I use for online.
Cool. Yeah.
So first thing I do is I pay attention to who's limping, who's using sizes that are variable. So who's min opening, then 3xing, then 4xing, who's using 3-bet sizes that don't exist. So it'll go open to 2.2x when we're 100 big blinds deep, open to 6x, open to 4x in position, but then 3.5x out of position. Opening Jack 4 offsuit and EP, opening King Deuce suited under the gun, but they're not a pro. Things like that.
Yeah, those stuff like that. You don't know if it's a mistake or not necessarily.
So I'll look for things that stand out. When I see someone do something very, very aggressive and they're a recreational player, I'll give them an aggressive tag. When I see them do stuff that is passive, I'll give them a passive tag. When I see them do something that's really passive, I'll give them a very passive tag. Then when I see them do something really nitty, I'll give them a very nitty tag. And then when I see them do something that only a pro would do, I'll give them a weak pro tag. Then as I see them make better and better decisions, I give them stronger and stronger professional.
Very detailed with it then.
So generally within 2 orbits, I have everyone at my table tagged.
Wow. Okay.
And within 5 orbits, I have everyone at my table tagged to a degree of how well they play. I have every pro tagged to a degree with how well they play. And let's say I'm playing an event like a 10K or a 5K, especially with the WSOP app, I'll actually have notes on live tells, timing tells, all that type of stuff too.
Okay.
That's cool. Good. Yeah. So to bring it back, like one thing I was going to bring up is tendencies of players in these fields. And I think like you talked about how much you open up your opening range. And I think to connect it back, it's like the reason you're able to do that is there's several reasons. One of them is people under 3-bet. So we are going to be able to see the flop a lot more with these hands that would have to fold to a 3-bet. 2 is like you're opening your range up, but it's almost all suited stuff. So you're not looking to play multi-way with queen 9 off from under the gun, right?
Definitely
not. So that's why, when we open up like a 7-5 suited or something, we want to, work with those types of hands that can make very strong things. So I think that's a good takeaway for people is like, if you're going to open up your ranges early on, do it with hands that play well multi-way, because you're going to end up playing multi-way a lot.
The other thing too is when you get 3-bet, for the most part, you're folding to 3-bets unless they size very, very small. So let's say you mid open and they 3-bet to, say you go 2 bigs and they 3-bet to like 5 bigs, and you have a hand like Jack 8 suited. Okay, that you get to call. You min open and they 3x, you have to fold it. And even though it's only one extra big blind, there's a huge difference in the implied odds you're getting. Them going 4 bigs more versus 3 bigs more. Or let's say instead of you having Jack 8 suited, you have Jack 6 suited, or you have, King 4 suited. Those are really different hands in terms of the equity you have versus a range that is aces, kings, queens, and ace king.
Okay.
You need to make sure that you have hands that have good utility versus a range that is nutted when your opponent only has nutted hands.
I think that's a really good point, and that's something I've realized about myself too, is that I've become good at folding. It's like ace jack offsuit. It's like it's terrible to call a 3-bet.
I'm just folding that without thinking about it. Even if I'm getting like I open 2 and they go to 5, I'm folding without thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's like this is the part that
5 suited, and I snap call without thinking about it.
Right. Yeah, it's like this is the part that is not fun for people. Is well, yes, we get to open up our opening range if everyone's under 3-betting. That means when they 3-bet us, unless they give us that great price, like we have to respect it.
Yeah.
So exactly. Keep in mind, guys, utility.
Yeah. You must be thinking in terms of, does my hand play well versus the range that is aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace king, maybe ace queen, maybe 10s.
And 5-7 suited does, but ace jack O does not.
Yeah, exactly. So you're often raise folding hands like ace, even ace queen. I might open ace queen, get 3-bet and snap fold, but then I'll open a hand like Jack 8 suited. They 3-bet me too small and I'm peeling. And it could be the exact same person in the exact same positions. Even versus the exact same size. I might fold the ace queen but call the Jack 8 suited.
Yep. Yeah, because the absolute value of both hands is you're still losing to their entire range, but one has a lot more equity.
Yeah, exactly. It's one has a lot, like I'm going to cooler them with the Jack 8 more than I'm going to cooler them with the ace queen. They're going to cooler me way more when I have the ace queen than when I have the Jack 8.
Should we move? Let's kind of move on to, and unless there's something else we want to discuss pre-flop or post-flop, but to turns. And Wes and I were discussing, we think, and it seems like in these lower buy-in fields, these massive lower buy-in fields at the WSOP.
Oh, can we discuss more flop stuff quick?
I was going to say flop stuff too.
Okay, if you got more, I'll hold on to that thought.
Okay, so the other flop stuff to think about, besides for sizing, is heads-up pots or in tournaments is where you make the most chips. This is why like opening a decent amount is really important, and why taking advantage of the fact that people don't 3-bet you enough and don't check raise you enough is really important. So whether you're deep stack or medium stack or shallower stack, if you're wondering why you struggle to build stacks and why you struggle to do well in tournaments, you're probably not opening enough, and you're probably not c-betting enough, and you're probably not check raising enough. So while you do need to play this, nimble kind of aggressive style, you want to be putting yourself into these situations where you can stab a lot. But you're also, again, playing a way where when you do face resistance, since your opponents aren't, battling enough, you face resistance, you just let it go. So you want to be c-betting a lot. And then when you do get these dynamic boards, when you do have your stronger ranges, whether these bigger draws or stronger hands, that's when you put these larger bets up. And then when you're playing in these multi-way pots, that's where things get a lot more interesting. So in 3-way pots, you can still be kind of c-bet happy, wherein you have, some equity, or it's like a dry board. It's these 4-way, 5-way, and 6-way pots. You need to be very, very disciplined. Just very disciplined.
Yeah, we've discussed that a lot. If you do not
play them very disciplined, you will get utterly demolished. And it can be demoralizing to raise, get 5 callers, check fold. Raise, get 3-bet fold. Raise, get 3 callers, check fold. Raise, get 5 callers, check fold. But the thing is playing live poker and low buy-ins, and I used to really just fire low buy-ins. Lifetime and buy-ins under 1,700, I think I have like a 200% ROI. And I've never had a massive score. Like I've never had a truly massive score for that buy-in range. And I still have an insane ROI in these. And I still only cash like 25% of the time. So even with me using this very nimble, very high ROI style, I'll still go a level and a half where I don't win a pot or where I barely win a pot. And it's because these very low stakes blinds, you're often going 3, 4, 5, and 6 ways.
Let's think about,
so how about, how about I give you a couple of flops? Like, let's say you open low jack.
Yep.
I'll give you a flop and I'll say, okay, how would you play this if only big blind called? Now, let's say button big blind called. Let's say cutoff button and big blind called. Yeah. So let's do two very different types of flops. Let's say the first one is 8-6-3 rainbow. Just big blind defense. So your heads up low jack versus big blind. What are you doing with different categories of hands here?
Okay, so let's talk about this spot in theory. In theory, this spot plays as big bet or check. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it does is because it's a board texture that hits the big blind's range really hard. So, and this spot actually plays as big bet or check at all stack depths, literally all stack depths. Mm-hmm. Short, medium, large, big bet or check. Now, let's say I'm playing versus a recreational player, and by that I mean they under check raise, which is literally everyone here. And I'm going to c-bet small with all of my bluffs and all of my very low equity hands. And then if I have a medium equity hand or larger, I'm betting very large. Mm-hmm. And that's if they're a very weak recreational player. Yeah. Let's say they're a medium strength recreational player. Then I'm generally going to play pretty similarly, but I just won't be as greedy with my larger bets. Maybe I'll pick just a 2/3 or 3/4 pot sizing with those. And then let's say I'm playing versus someone that is a very strong pro, but maybe not someone I've played a lot with. Then I'll generally just pick like a 2/3 pot sizing, but I'll actually significantly over c-bet it because I'll still expect them to under c-bets or under check raise. So my c-bets will significantly overperform. So I'll just over c-bet it, and that's how I'll break the game. Essentially, is I'll just over c-bet.
Yeah,
perfect. I love how you classify. Yeah, put that into classes. It's beautiful.
That's great. Yeah. So now let's say button and big blind called, same flop.
So here your exact hand strength actually matters a decent bit. You need a hand that has some type of continuing equity because the button's calling range is going to fuck with you a bit. So button versus hijack, they're going to have actually some hands that kind of interact with the 8 a decent amount. They're going to have some 9-10, some jack-9, some ace-9, ace-8, some pocket pairs, some of those types of hands. And the big blind's calling range also interacts with this board texture really well too. So you have two different ranges that you're kind of hurt by a little bit. And then your own opening range actually interacts pretty well with this texture. So because your own opening range interacts well with this texture, I would actually be checking this board pretty often. And I would just be focusing on betting hands with equity. So any hand that has a 9, a 10 in it, over pairs, straight draws, backdoor straight draws, backdoor flush draws with overcards, all of those are bets. And I would just largely be betting small-ish for the most part. Unless both players are recreational players and I have a strong value hand, then I would just be upsizing.
Okay.
Or so if the big blind's a recreational player, then I would just be bombing my value. Like I would just be picking very large sizes.
Okay. Nice. And then let's say cutoff button, both blinds call. We're 5 ways to this flop. Obviously a ton of checking now.
Yeah.
But,
more likely at a WSOP event.
Okay. So in theory, let's imagine that we could build a solver that could run a 5-way solve. You would need a quantum computer. It's just, I would guess that you could only get small sizes and like maybe not even that. 15% pot size would be my guess, or less. And you would be checking like 90% of the time, 95% of the time. Mm-hmm. And the reason why these small bets exist in these multi-way pots is because it's very hard to have hands that want to bet large multi-way because you're essentially let's say you're playing 3 ways. You're betting a hold'em hand into kind of a PLO hand.
Right.
So when you're betting into 4 opponents, you're betting a hold'em hand into like a 6-card PLO hand.
Sure, yeah.
Essentially 5-card PLO hand. It's just like, how do you have a hand that's strong enough to bet there? So it's very hard to bet. But when you do bet, a small bet clears equity really nicely. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice to bet stuff, but it's hard to bet a lot of stuff. So you want to bet very small. So it's kind of important to bet stuff, but everyone kind of wants to bet stuff, but you don't want to get check raised off stuff. So you get to bet, but you only get to bet small. So I would be generally betting small in theory. In actuality, I would be kind of splitting between small and big bets again. And I would just be betting, my small bets would just be like 9-7 suited, 5-7 suited, 4-5 suited, so that you have down straight draws. And then my large bets would be sets and like aces, kings, queens, and jacks and tens. And by large bets, I mean I would go like half pot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Because I think, and that's the other side of this too, is people in these fields will they'll over continue. Like if you take this big sizing, someone might
they just won't
have a
realize
6
you're nutted.
and they'll call once with a 6. Right. And it's as if it was like a heads up spot.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, they should be folding every 8 always versus like your half pot bet when, it's just like
it's not in reality.
Torching money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're just torching money there. Like, honestly, like in these really soft fields, you're playing 2 different games.
Yep.
One game is lots of very small pots where you're just stab, 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 stab. And your stack is constantly going like this in those small pots, but it's trending upwards. And then you're playing another game where occasionally you get really lucky and you make a big hand, and then you play as big pots as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the way you're playing these really big pots is because since your opponents play too tight, weak, passive, with some exceptions, you just blast as hard as you can in whatever ways that you find that fits that situation. There will be times where blasting will be you check raise. There will be times where blasting will be you go 75% pot or half pot or pot or over pot. Like for instance, you'll see an opponent who limp, all of a sudden they 5x and you're 150 big blinds deep. My 3-bet size will be to 25 bigs.
Okay.
Right. And it's going to be like aces, kings, queens.
Oh, maybe just aces or kings.
Yeah, that's fair.
I might not even 3-bet queens there.
Yeah.
Or like
fair.
You'll see someone who's mostly c-betting a third pot, and all of a sudden they c-bet over pot. My check raise will literally just be sets in top 2, and my check raise size will be to like 6x their bet or something.
I think that's
like
so important to kind of put in front, though. We can just capitalize on these types of players because, like you said, they tell us exactly what they have.
Exactly.
And we don't have to feel constrained by yes, if I was observing myself making this play, it would be the most obvious thing ever.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about balancing against them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're telling me they have the near nuts and I beat that. Okay, let's get Saxon. Mm-hmm. They're telling me they have the nuts and I have the near nuts. Okay, I'm folding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
simplified.
I'll give you guys an example of this. So I was playing the Monster Stack Day 3. This is a short stack spot.
That's
thin brag. But short stack spot, thin brag. Situation was Day 3 Monster. Really good young German kid. Opens under the gun off of like 9 bigs. Good European pro who spends a lot of time in Vegas, spends like 6 months of the year here or more. I think maybe he has dual citizenship or something. Anyways, good European kid, also fairly young, spends a lot of time here, and I played a decent amount with them. He calls also an early position. And when he calls here, I'm pretty worried that he has some traps, but folds to me in mid-position.
You might have talked about this one last time.
Yeah. So
please continue, though. Please continue.
Yeah. In this spot, so I have kings off of like 19 bigs effective. Opener has 9 bigs. Second guy has like 30 bigs. So it goes raise, call. I 3-bet to like 4.5 bigs. Then it goes all in. Now, when it goes all in, the first guy only has aces or kings, maybe queens. And the second person's calling to backjam range is only aces or kings.
Yeah.
So I only have a fold.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, right?
And both players are very good professionals. But when you're playing versus recreational players, these types of situations occur all the time where you have a near nutted hand and your opponent is telling you that you are beat. But this occurs literally all the time. In fact, there are so many situations where here are really good examples of these types of spots where people don't think about how they can win the pot. So let's say, okay, here's a really good example. So let's say I open the button and big blind defends, doesn't really matter stack depth, and flop comes like king 5 deuce. And you have a hand like, I don't know, queen 4 suited. And you see bet and they call, and the turn's like, I don't know, a 9 of hearts. So it's not a good card for you to double barrel, and turn goes check, check, and the river's like an 8 and they check. And maybe backdoor, or maybe turned hearts came in or whatever, and they check. Almost everyone just checks back here and loses the pot. What you should do here is bet 200 or bet 2x pot and just win 100% of the time.
Okay, creative.
Because what your opponent is telling you is they have a weak showdown hand that
Second
can't
pair.
call a large bet.
Yeah, or fourth
They
pair.
have
At this
fourth
point.
pair,
second, third, or fourth pair.
Yeah.
If they had top pair, they would bet. There are infinite of these spots that exist. Here's another good example. Instead, you're the opponent in the big blind. You have a deuce. You have, maybe you have queen deuce suited, which would be a hand that purely check calls in theory. You played it as a check call because that's what you're supposed to do. This exact run out happens. Almost everyone just checks. What are you supposed to do here is in theory, you're supposed to check. What you should do here instead is you should just bet like 2x pot. Because when you bet 2x pot, you win the hand literally 100% of the time. But what people do instead is they check.
Okay.
And the reason why you should bet here is because in both of these situations, your opponent is telling you that they're weak and capped.
Mm-hmm. And we can just
There are all
take
of
advantage
these
of that.
situations that your opponents tell you their hand strength, and people just ignore it.
And this is something we should be capitalizing on, specifically in WSOP events, because I mean, you'll see it a lot.
Soft live events, you see it all the time.
Yeah, live events specifically compared to online. Yeah, for sure.
Their body language, their play will tell you. Then on top of that, they'll just look like they've given up.
By the way, that reminds me, I saw someone tweet this video, story time real quick. But that, I think it was the main, I don't even know. It was some hand where it was like Phil Hellmuth. Okay, some guy opens kings, some lady jams over the top. And then
famous Brett Ritchie hand. Yeah. I've seen this video like 50 times.
and then Phil Hellmuth snap jams. They both stand up. The lady's saying, I got aces to her husband, Dan Shack in the background or whatever. And Phil Hellmuth and her are high-fiving, and the guy still calls with pocket king.
Yeah, she's going like this, and Brett Ritchie goes, call.
Yeah, I could believe, they're telling, your opponent was literally telling you what they had.
Yeah,
I think it's okay to vote. Have you seen that video?
Literally happens.
I have.
All the time, live. And by all the time, I mean, okay, so let's say, I played this 800 that I final tabled a couple days ago, and I would say my opponents probably told me their hand over the course of that tournament, I don't know, 20 times.
Sorry, which tournament was it? I was still laughing.
It was an 800 Venetian.
Okay, yep.
800 live tournament. My opponents probably told me their hand 20 times, 30 times. That's just normal.
And sometimes, I know we've been guilty of it, and it's like sometimes these aren't even super weak players. They're like decent.
Yeah, they're a lot of times. Yeah, they're decent regs or okay pros. They're players that I definitely have marked as players that I consider to be decent.
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't thinking creatively enough. They're not playing balanced enough. They're not protecting their ranges enough. They're not doing what they need to do against another good pro who's just going to take advantage of it.
Do you have any tips for overcoming the fear of making those plays? I feel like amateurs will have a little bit of, instead of just knowing this is theoretically correct, they'll be a little scared. And you got to overcome that to be able to do these kinds of things.
So when you enter a tournament, let's say you're entering an 800 at the World Series. Let's say I enter an 800 at the World Series and I play from hand one. And let's say it has a good structure. So 40-minute levels. I probably have somewhere between 150 and 400% ROI in that field. Whoever the best exploitive player plus theoretical player in that tournament has somewhere between 200 and 500% ROI in that field, 600% ROI in that field. I don't know what's theoretically the top end, somewhere in that range. It's very, very, very high, right?
Mm-hmm.
they're still only going to cash that thing about 25 to 30% of the time.
Yep.
Best player in that field is only going to cash it 25% of the time. So why are you scared? Most of the time you're losing that money
anyways.
Yeah, that money is already gone. What are you scared of?
I love it.
And then on top of that, here's the other thing. The best players in these fields, the reason why they're good is because they're willing to take these spots. They're willing to take these decisions. The other thing as well is here's another good way to think about it. Patrick Leonard made a post somewhat recently about how you bust tournaments. The main way you bust a tournament is actually just losing on a flip.
Yep.
You're actually more likely to bust a tournament losing on a flip the worse you play and the tighter you play. And if you hate losing on flips or, taking thin spots to bust, then you need to take these spots. Because if you're not taking these spots, where are you gaining chips from?
You got to build a stack up to be able to withhold.
How are you building a stack if you're not opening a lot and 3-betting a lot and c-betting a lot, battling, and where's your edge?
Don't be a pussy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You got to battle. You got to fight.
Let's go back. So let's do a different type of flop for that same thing. So we open low jack. We'll just say big blind defends this time, and we get ace queen 8 two-tone. Big blind checks.
Okay, so so in theory, this is a really fun board. In theory, we get 3 sizes here. We can go small, we can go medium, we can go large. At all stack depths too. Although large at a shallow stack isn't that big. So
and I will say
how short you are.
These are the best because when we can go several sizes in theory, that's the solver's way of telling us go with your read, use whatever exploit, because it's these aren't
telling us that, and also it's telling us that turn gets really fun really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of get to play flop based off of your hand category and hand strength. It gets really, really, really.
Let me ask you guys real quick, as the least theory learned here. The reason why we can go 3 different sizes. Let me give my understanding of why all 3 of those are, and you tell me if I'm correct or incorrect. We can go large because we can apply pressure to second and third pairs. We can check because we can trap because we have range advantage, and we can bet small because we have range advantage. Kind of something like that. Does that make sense?
Well, we're probably not checking here at all.
Oh, we're not checking. 3 sizes.
So small, medium bet sizes.
Sorry, you're right. So it's small. So we bet small, just because we have range advantage essentially, and
and because we have some hands that only want to bet tiny and check turn.
And that's with entire range, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have some hands that want to bet tiny and then barrel medium and then triple barrel off.
Okay.
We have some hands usually when you have a spot where you get 3 sizes and your entire range is betting, it's a dynamic board texture where you're at a very large range advantage. That's usually the spot. Okay. And this is that exact spot. These are the only types of board textures where that's going to exist. Okay. Two-tone, triple connected, gaps between all 3, plus high, mid, or high, mid. Okay. The only types of board where it's really going to exist.
That makes sense. And so for example, a hand like Queen 8 suited has all these properties where it's a super strong hand. We flop 2 pair. We also unblock top pair. So there are tons of draws and they could just have top pair. So we want to bet large with this hand.
Yeah. Yeah. That I'm sure if you gave the solver an option 2x pot, it would probably take it at 100 bigs.
Yeah.
Plus, how are we going to get that money if we don't bet big?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I assume that hand would just go whatever E is or whatever 2x pot would be or some various size depending on stacked up. So, okay, so versus pro, we do that. And then we get a lot of fun triple barrels versus pros. Well, let's say you have a hand like pocket 4s here. Yep. Oh, baby. Deuces, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s. Oh, you're triple barreling off so often with those types of candidates, especially on non-flush runouts. Those hands are primo triples. I love those types of triples. They're so good, especially because they were so unintuitive that the first couple of times I started seeing them, now they're just they're just great. And then let's say we're playing versus a recreational player. I'm generally just auto quarter potting with everything that's not a queen or better. But let's say I have a queen or better. I'm almost always going 2/3 pot or larger. So let's say I have a queen deuce. I'm actually just going 2/3 pot.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going that large with the queen is because when you're playing versus weaker recreational players, or even versus weak regs, the main thing that a lot of these types of hands that are these mid pairs really want to do is they're only one street hands. And what's often going to happen on the turn is turn's going to go check, check. And on the river, your hand is still a really good bluff catcher.
Yeah.
So what you want to do with this hand is you want to bet once, build the pot, and then call the river or have river go check, check.
And that's what's beautiful about position is then you can check back the turn and then get to see the river anyway.
Exactly. The other thing about playing the turn is a lot of people think the turn is tough to play. The turn is the easiest street. The turn is by far the least complex street. The river is by far the most complex street. It is entirely separate from the rest of the game. You need to use very complex math and you need to use game theory mathematics in order to solve for it and build game theory models in order to solve for it. It is crazy how complex it is. It's entirely separate because it is, since previous streets have continuing equity that's all shifting, river is just done. Since it is done, everything is entirely different. The turn, the reason why it is very simple and is very one note is in position, you check or you bet large.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Out of position on the turn is a lot more interesting. There are often spots where you get some block bets. There are spots where you get some small and medium bets, but it's not that often really. A lot of times out of position on the turn, you're still mostly betting medium or checking. It's just there are a lot more block spots. You can simplify a lot of out of position turn spots as medium or check, but there's a lot more small betting. But in position on the turn, super simple. You either have a hand that wants to bluff, have a hand that wants to push value, or your hand wants to check. There is just no real in between. So when I'm playing versus recreational players on the turn, it's a lot more interesting because I have to go, okay, so let's say I have a hand like ace-7. So let's say I go 2/3 pot, they call, and the turn's like an offsuit 5. Versus the computer or versus someone who I think is a very good pro, I have an easy check. I don't think about it. I just snap check it back. But versus a weak recreational player, I actually have a really interesting decision. So I could check. I could go 30%. I could go 50%. I could go 2/3 pot. I could maybe go 75% pot. I could, let's say we're deep in this tournament. Now I'm just checking. Let's say it's super early stages. I could bet. I have all this flexibility in terms of what I could do. So the exact threshold is kind of close. So that's why, like, when I'm playing versus recreational players, I think poker is a lot more interesting than if I'm just playing versus the robot.
Totally, yeah. So let's say we do get that. Let's say that exact spot, ace-7. We bet large on flop.
I'll probably go 80% on pot, or sorry, on flop.
Perfect. We get the 5 turn, big blind checks, and it's a recreational player of some sort. What are the factors going in half pot turn? And the idea being like we can get value from a lot of draws. They'll probably call it queen with this for this size.
So I expect a lot of value from draws. The other thing that's really important, I'm never going to get check raised as a bluff.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's really important, they're going to underbluff the river when turn goes check, check.
Yeah. And so, okay, those last 2 points are great because I think one thing I wrote down is like a lot of times people will, I think just in general, people will underbluff, but also like people are not aggressive enough. Like on this turn here, if you get check raised by a recreational, you're dead. Like they just have it.
Yeah.
And by like, even if you get check raised by a pro, this is a hand you're probably folding. So that's why you check and then bluff catch river. But yeah, like you can take advantage of tendencies of recreational players by going thinner for value in these spots and maybe using that in between size that a solver won't give you, but it makes sense.
The other thing to think about is, when you're studying these solvers, when it's telling you to check a hand that is strong enough to technically bet for value, it's expecting you to pick up equity from that check. But where does that equity come from? That equity comes from, in part, from your opponent bluffing correctly and from your hand improving. But if your opponent is never bluffing correctly, if they're significantly under bluffing, then you need to bet your own hand. If they're significantly over bluffing, then checking now becomes incredibly good.
Yep.
So there will be opponents where checking the turn is ridiculously good, and then versus everyone else, betting the turn is way better.
Yep.
Makes sense.
That's a good way to look at it, is if you think your opponent is bluffing a ton, you want to let them do that and then call. If you don't think they're going to bluff rivers much, like try and kind of extract. That's when you can sort of, I feel like betting half pot is sort of like turning your hand face up. You're just betting your hand strength.
Yeah, which I do that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot live. I do it so much.
Yeah.
Which, the thing that's really ironic is my opponents are constantly telling me their hand strength. And what am I doing? I'm constantly telling my opponents my hand strength.
Yeah. Oh, I've realized that too. I've had spots where like I get so used to doing that, and then I run into a pro and I'm like, oh crap, like they just owned me because I did that.
But that's why, like, one of the first things I do when I'm playing versus someone is how good are they? What is their play style? What exploits am I using? That is always what I'm thinking. I'm literally always thinking about that 100% of the time. That is the first thing I think about. If I'm thinking about bluff catching, the first thing I think about isn't, do I have a good bluff catch? What is their bluffing range? It's, are they capable of bluffing with this size? Then it's, what is their bluffing range? And then it's, do I unblock those bluffs? Then it's, based on that, is my hand a good bluff catcher?
For those who are not professionals but are looking to kind of improve their game to that point, what are some indicators that they can sit down and look for that might help them figure out the difference between a fish and a professional?
Consistent sizes pre-flop.
Okay.
Based off of like openings. Pretty much never open limping, with the exceptions of like completing the small blind or like some sub 15 big blind or sub 20 big blind late position stuff, or some mystery bounty stuff. 3-bet sizes that are generally 2.5 to 3x in position, and generally 4x out of position unless they're very shallow effective. Flop c-bet sizes that are generally a quarter pot on flops, unless boards are dynamic, then are generally half pot or more, with some exceptions. I would say for the most part, players that are in their 30s, with some exceptions. Let's see here. And then I would say like that's a pretty good list of things.
I think it's a good summary for sure.
That's like a pretty good summary. And then like the other things I would say is, if you're not that certain whether someone is a pro or not, then you're probably not studying enough yourself, because I can sit down, like I said, I can sit down and within 2 orbits, I know who's a recreational player at my table. Yeah. I might not know like whether a pro is good or not, but I definitely know if someone's not a pro. And then within like 5 orbits, I know how good everyone is at my table within a tier.
Do you ever judge by demeanor or strictly by play?
I'll judge by demeanor sometimes. If I just see some random, not to be ageist, but if I see some random 60-year-old walk up, I'm just gonna assume.
Well, sometimes you'll see these faux pros where like they kind of have all the things that make them seem like a pro, and then all of a sudden you see some really fishy some plays where you're like, okay, and then you can take them opposite.
Yeah. But usually those players too, I'll like maybe, and then 3 hands later, recreational player take.
Yeah, that should be your new screen name on whatever the next site is, Wes. Faux pro.
Faux pro. Oh, there's so many good ones. That's a good one.
I just think that like, some of the round, like one of the main rounders lines that really has held up, that if you can't spot the, you can't spot the fish at the table. Sucker at the table.
Sucker.
In the first, what was it? First orbit, first
30 minutes maybe or something.
30 minutes, something like that.
I don't remember, but something like that.
Something like that. Like, then you are the sucker. Like, that is just, it's very true. Like, I usually can tell at the table within 2 orbits, which is what, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Who is a recreational player?
If you can't spot the sucker in your first half hour at the table, then you are.
You are. Yeah, exactly. Which that's true. Like, I know within 30 minutes who is a recreational player and who is not. There's very few exceptions to that. Like, there are a couple players who do like break that. Like Ryan Lang is a good example. He's one of the few pros I know who incorporates a lot of limps into his game. And he does it very, very well. But he's like literally one of the only good live no limit players I know who incorporates a lot of limps and does it well.
Okay.
So he's literally the only one I can think of that does it.
Is there any other thoughts we have pre-flop, post-flop, turn, river before we ask you about your schedule this summer?
Well, yeah. Let's finish up. So we talked about ace queen 8 two-tone, right? Let's say now instead of the big blind, let's say button cut. Let's just say cutoff and button both call, and then big blind calls as well. What is our flop strategy? How is that going to be different now?
So it depends on who the callers are, because the first caller is allowed to have a decent number of calls. Now that we're all in late position, like they can be calling like 75% of their continuing range, so they can have lots of calls. The first over caller should be playing a pretty 3-bet happy range. They should be pretty 3-bet happy. They just get lots of squeezes. Like they don't like. So the range is like pre-flop is pretty weak, just because they get lots of like easy squeezes. They don't really have that much ace-x, so they're pretty weak. The big blind's also pretty weak. So this is a board that's actually just really good for you. So even though you're 4 ways, if all players involved are like okay-ish or like kind of weakish, but not like super, super, super recreational, this is actually a good board for you to just triple off a lot.
Yeah.
No one should ever flop 2 pair outside of like ace-8 suited and queen-8 suited, with the exception of the big blind. Should have like some rare ace-8s or some rare pocket 8s. So like this should just be a really good spot for you to just triple barrel off a lot. So it's actually a spot that I would significantly over c-bet, even if it's a spot that seems like it might be a little scary too. When you're looking at 3 ranges that are all very weak and a board that's very good for you, it's actually a spot that I would be kind of crazy on.
That makes sense.
But with intention of being nuts on clean runouts. Like I want a turn deuce of hearts, river, 6 of clubs. I just want the cleanest run out, and I'm just blasting.
Makes sense.
And it would also be really good if I turned a pair or river to pair. That would be best.
Then you
block 2 pairs. I want to unblock draws. I want it to be really clean, and then I just get to triple barrel like none other.
Yeah. No, that's a
good top pair in the blender.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it from the other perspective, if we have ace 10 or something, let's say cutoff as ace 10 suited, you face big bet,
4 ways,
overbet, turn, jam, river. Like,
yeah.
Why would you ever want to call that?
Yeah, exactly.
So, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we want to not make this one go super
Can
long.
I discuss one other thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, playing versus c-bets. If you're playing versus someone that's playing a pretty stab-happy style, which you're going to run into a lot this series or in these types of events, main thing you really want to study a lot, and this is pretty easy spot to study, is pull up something like Octopi or Lab or Wiz and study playing out of the big blind versus c-bets. It's easily the most common spot you're going to run into playing tournaments or cash. It's the spot you defend the most, spot you're going to play out of position the most often, and spot you're going to have either the most, awkward spots in. And also, it's one of the most misplayed situations is just playing versus c-bets and doing it very poorly. And I would say the population average in terms of check raising is probably around 5%. When I do coaching sessions with people, if we do a database review, I would say the average check raise percent is probably around 7 or 8.
Okay.
In theory, the overall check raise percent in tournaments, depending on stack depth and all these other factors, is usually around like 15 to like 18 or 19%. So most people are check raising 1/3 of average, and most pros that I coach check raise half of average or less.
So none of us are doing it enough.
Really, really bad. Yeah, very few people are doing it enough.
Okay.
I really try very hard to do it enough, and I barely get there. And a lot of the check raises I push are like kind of absurd, and I still barely get there. Like here, I have my PT4 up right now. My check raise percent on ACR with me really trying hard to do it is okay. I did hit it. I'm at 22% right now.
Okay.
Which that's me really pushing it. So I'm like just above what theory wants. But I expect people to over c-bet and then overfold versus check raises. And that's kind of like what you want to do is people c-bet okay. Continuing versus check raises is very hard because in a lot of spots they're supposed to be calling you with top or with ace high, with bottom pair, with king high with backdoor draws, queen high with backdoor draws. So if it's a spot where you know your opponent is c-betting very, very wide, where you know they're just auto stabbing, you should be check raising with any hand that has any backdoor type equity, backdoor straight and flush combo draws. So good example, let's say the flop is king 9-3. Your opponent opened from mid-late position. Flop is king 9-3. They c-bet a quarter pot, and you have 5-6 of clubs. Check raise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take a quarter pot, you check raise. Easy check raise. It's not even a thought for me. I just take that check raise. You have jack 8 of hearts, check raise. You have jack 10, check raise. Queen 10, check raise. Queen jack, check raise. Jack 7 of hearts, check raise. 7-8 of hearts, check raise. All of those combos. Backdoor straight and flush draws, gutter balls, double blocking combos, check raise.
And if you're struggling to find those, is to make sure to think about what you said about you're going to bust the tournament most of the time anyways, so might as well be finding them.
And the thing is when your opponent bets a quarter pot, they're giving themselves 4-1 odds for that c-bet to get through. So if you're not taking these check raises, they just get to print free money. Yeah. Why are you letting them take your chips from you?
Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, and also like because people under check raise, when we get check raise, it's probably smart to overfold. So even good players, if you check raise them a ton, they might overfold. And it might be correct in a macro sense, but not if you're check raising enough.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that the other thing that I wanted to touch on, and we don't have a ton more time here, but I think something that might be worth people studying a bit if they have the time is like how to c-bet against non-big blind defense. So if you get called by the small blind or by the button and cutoff, like if you open low jack and then button is the only caller, you're not just supposed to range bet. You have a lot less like range bet type of boards.
Yeah. So the reason why that exists is for two reasons. So let's say you open EP or MP and button cutoff or hijack call. Mm-hmm. You're going to be checking very frequently. And the reason why this happens is two reasons. First of all, their calling range is pretty condensed. So you're up against a range that is a lot stronger than a big blind or even small blind calling range. And then the second reason why it happens is because your opponent has position. So when your opponent has position, your EQR, so your equity realization, drops off a cliff. Mm-hmm. So even if your range is uncapped and their range is capped because they call pre-flop, and you're technically at a range advantage, they're actually at a large strategic advantage. And the way that theory works across all game types, all formats, literally all stack depths and everything, when you're at a strategic disadvantage, you play very defensively. Mm-hmm. So let's say, someone opens an EP, big blind defends. The reason why big blind pure checks is because they are at a massive disadvantage. So they play hyper defensively.
Makes sense.
So this spot, technically you're at a range advantage, but you're at a very large strategic disadvantage. So because of that, even though you're technically in an okay spot, since you're at this massive strategic disadvantage, you're going to be checking here like 65% of the time overall across all board textures. Yeah. Even on very good board textures, you're still checking like 40 or 50% of the time.
Yeah, and to put it in a different sort of context, one thing I've said to people is a lot of times if you're out of position, checking is a better way to get information, because if they're in position, they're going to call a ton of your C bets on many boards at least. But if you check, like if they check back, now they're kind of capped and you're
Yep.
not really capped because you're supposed to do a lot of checking. So obviously board dependent, but
Yeah, now you get to bomb turn
mhm.
over pot river. Easy game.
I
Yep.
love it.
Yeah, super easy.
Poker's
It
easy,
is.
you guys.
Yeah.
Your opponent tells you they're weak. Win the pot.
And this is stuff we'll find in these styles and these level of tournaments for sure.
Yeah.
Give me 3 takeaways that you would just give to any type of player going to the summer.
Get a good, cheap GTO study tool. Spend every single day, minimum 30 minutes studying pre-flop and studying playing flop. For studying playing flop, study c-betting and playing versus c-bets. For studying pre-flop, literally study playing versus open and playing as the opener. And I would focus on studying between 20 to 40 big blinds deep and sub 20 big blinds deep.
Love it. Okay.
Perfect.
I do it every single day, minimum 30 minutes. It's just like going to the gym and spending 30 minutes in the gym. If you want to play poker at a high
exercising your
level,
brain.
you got to do that. Yep, you got to do it.
That makes sense.
It is a requirement. It is a necessity if you want to be decent at this. So the other thing I would say is if you're playing any tournament, expect to lose and be okay with it. By entering the tournament, you already set that money on fire. So why are you scared?
That's a good one. That's important.
Yep.
It's important. And let me ask you, what does your schedule look like this summer?
I was actually building out my summer packages right before this.
Okay.
So
you got some action maybe for the people?
My low stakes and medium stakes stuff will sell out privately immediately. I might have some high stakes stuff available. By high stakes, I mean 5Ks and 10Ks available publicly, maybe. But that stuff will probably sell out.
They can find you on Twitter though if you do that.
Yeah, okay. Twitter. Yep. At Protential MN, or if you Google me, it'll pop up. But my schedule is very similar to what I did last year, which for live, I play buy-ins between 500 and 3K for the most part. I'll play some of the best 5Ks for Nolan Hold'em, PLO. And then for 10Ks, I'm playing 100%. I'm playing 10K PLO, 10K PLO8, 10K Big O, 10K Win, 10K Main. And then if I'm having a good series, I'll play the 10K 6 Max. If I'm having a really sick series, I would love to play the 25K PLO again. I've played in the past and cashed in it. I think it's a good tournament, and it's usually really big. But I only play it if I'm having a really good series and I can justify selling to it and taking a shot.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with health issues, so how much of a series I play really just comes down to that. I got diagnosed recently, and I'm going to be on medications and stuff that really mess with my immune system. So I'm going to be wearing a mask all series and hopefully not getting sick. And so we'll see how that stuff goes. But hopefully I get to play a full schedule, and hopefully I do okay.
We hope the same for you. I hope you're able to feel better quickly.
I had an online final table. I had some really close calls live. So let's see if I can get some good sweats in. What are you guys doing?
Wesley?
Yeah. So my thought, I'll be out there for all of it except for maybe a week. After the Millie Maker, I'm going to go home for about a week. I will be playing, the weekend events at the WSOP, the big, massive ones. During the weeks, I've been looking at it. I might be playing more of the Win Venetian Aria type stuff.
There are a lot of really good options
to 1600s. Yeah, there's and it's smart by them. They have the multi-day 1100s Monday through Thursday or whatever.
Yeah, I have a lot of the last flight of those on my schedule too.
Yep. So I might focus more around that. I think that would be better than playing a random 2K bracelet event that starts on a Monday. And then almost certainly playing the main. There's also a lot of good lower buy and hold 'em stuff during / whenever you bust out of the main. Debating because there's 2 MSPTs like at the end of the series, and I'm debating, if I want to, like, I probably would play those. But at that late in the summer, it's just kind of, do I want to get back home or not?
Yeah, both of those in my schedule for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they'll both be good.
Yeah.
I'll be changing diapers all summer. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a new father. So I'll be right now. My only plan is the main event. Unfortunately, I will be missing out. But as I've mentioned before, I really look forward to sweating you guys. I'll be watching every stream. I'll be following all of the updates the entire time.
Yeah.
And then
I got to get on another stream.
Well, you got the baby daddy run good, so maybe you'll just get a deep main event.
For the main. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
I'd take that for sure.
Max needs a 7-figure score.
It's coming.
Kids are expensive. Daycare is absurd how expensive it is.
It's insane. It's more than a mortgage payment.
Yeah, some friends of mine who live in the Milwaukee area, their kids went from daycare to private school, and they were happy because private school is cheaper.
Jeez.
That's actually just insane. But we'll just kind of see how right now it's just in the air for me. So I would love to get out there. This is the first time I haven't been out there for at least, the last 3-4 summers I've been out there for 3 to 4 weeks. This summer will just be, I have priorities, obviously. So I just hope that you guys give me a reason to get excited back here at home. I would love to sweat some deep runs. So please do that for me. Yeah, I need some of that good Vegas food because that's one of the things I'll miss the most.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much. A third time on the podcast, and I hope maybe another 10 more. Like, honestly, it's so fun having you on. You do such a great job just kind of getting our brains lit up. And I was thinking during this podcast, like, I'm super excited to play poker. The good news is I still have online while my son Hayes will, sit there and play while I'm watching him. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like every time we have you on, it's like we could talk for 4 or 5 hours about whatever it is. And so, I'm sure we'll talk some more strategy.
Let me throw a plug for you. Do you have any coaching have any coaching slots available before the WSOP if anyone's interested?
No, not really. I'm just filling in slots for people that have slots booked with me and doing stuff for my coaching side. And that's it. I've just been focusing on my health and then grinding online occasionally. And that's it. So doing that. If you do want to interact with me at all, you can do it for free through our site on School, skool.com/learnpropoker. Totally free to join. We have a community on there, 5,000 members. I check pretty much daily to see if there's posts and stuff. Welcome to ask questions and stuff. I do group coaching sessions for anyone who finishes in the top 10 on our monthly leaderboard. I occasionally do free group coaching sessions that's open to everyone. The winner of our monthly leaderboard gets a free one-on-one coaching session with me. And to get points for the leaderboard, all you have to do is post, and if someone likes it, you get a point. So just by interacting.
Cool. I love that.
And then beyond that, just learn pro poker. If you go to our main site, it's $57 a month. I do 2 normal videos, and then plus any of our coaching videos also get added. And the normal videos are a mixture of theory, coaching sessions plus tournament reviews. Like for instance, my Venom final table from last year, the entire run's on there. Any of my bracelet final table runs are on there from online. The series I'm doing right now is all about C betting. So I'm doing super in-depth series on C betting right now. So I do have a pretty wide range of content and post videos every month, 2 videos a month at minimum. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, I definitely, hope that everybody goes and checks out the content of yours. Clearly from listening to all the times you've been on this episode, it's going to be high value. So make sure to check that out. I look forward to checking out myself. I was going to say something else. I'm having a brain fart right now, but I will just say that, thank you again. We appreciate you. I hope that you get 2 more bracelets this summer. So let's
really want number 2. And I've been chasing Blake Bond on
all-time
money list for so long.
You gotta be right
Aaron
there.
Johnson is also right on my heels.
Yeah.
So trying to stay ahead of Aaron and also trying to catch up with Blake. I've always been within 300 to 600K of Blake. I've gotten within 100,000 once, but right now he's like 500K ahead of me. and Aaron is just like right behind me, like within a
I mean, Aaron,
he's on a heater.
he just tacked on $1 million in December, so that
and then 2 MSPT wins on top of that.
Yeah, so he's like, nipping at my heels and is likely to pass me. So I'm trying to catch up with Blake and stay ahead of Aaron. So I got 2 goals this series. Well, a lot more than that, but 2 other goals this series. One of them past Blake, but I know he's trying hard to stay ahead of now me and Aaron. So got a lot of hard work ahead of me. Cool. But thank you very much for having me on. Really do appreciate it. And hope everyone checks out my stuff.
All right. We'll talk to you later, man. Have a great night.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.